Hi everyone, so I'm Xavier Antoviaque, I'm with Marc
And Farhaan.
and Farhaan. We are presenting today the Open Source Masterclass applied to OpenEdX, where we'll be exploring how to approach a project as a new contributor, and OpenEdX in particular, and make sure that it's a good experience, which is not always the case with contributing to open source at the beginning. So welcome. This is the Open Source Masterclass, so I'll explain a bit later the details of the project, but that's a MOOC that is on OpenEdX, is open and free and etc. To teach people how to contribute to open source projects. We've all struggled through that, and the idea is to try to say what we wish we had known when we got started with that. But before getting into that, and so that it's not just Marc and me presenting for the whole 2.5 hours and you getting a bit sleepy because it's after digestion, I will try to make that a bit of an interactive session, like more of a discussion between us, especially we are not a lot, so that's perfect for that. And so maybe the first thing would be to do a round of introductions of everyone, quick, because we don't need to spend 2 hours, but just to get an idea first who you are and what you're looking for. Because some people want to learn how to contribute, some people want to learn how to teach, how to contribute, for example, or improve the way we do it on OpenEdX, and etc. So on my side, I'm Xavier Antoviaque. I'm from OpenCraft, one of the contributors of the MOOC, and I'm really interested in making sure there is a good resource within the open source community as a whole for learning how to contribute. So here will be more specifically within the OpenEdX project, but it's something that all the open source projects I've been involved with have needed, and this is actually a collaboration between different projects to try to get to that. All right, do you want to go, Marc?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Marc Jeanmougin. I actually work here in Télécom Paris. I'm also one of the maintainers of the Inkscape project, which is an open source vector graphics program. I also I mentor GSOC applicants every year, and I also wanted to be able to point good resources to learn how to contribute, how to get into open source contributions when from a starting point of students who can already program. So it's both for GSOC applicants in the context of me being a contributor to Inkscape, and also in the context of me being a teacher here, because my students actually, some know how to program, but most of them have never touched a code base they have not written entirely themselves. And so they don't really know how to get into a big code base and how to start dealing with others to contribute on common projects. And that will also help them in their future careers as software engineers, because when you go, if you don't create your startup, you basically have to deal with code that others have written for you, or is there since 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And it's basically the same kind of skills that you have to go when you want to contribute to an established open source project. So I wanted to create good learning resources to get from I know how to program a function to I know how to contribute to an open source project or to a project in general.
All right.
So I actually have a course here for first-year students, which is very similar materials to this MOOC, but adapted to in-presence learning and not MOOCs.
Do we use that one? All right, you want to start?
Okay. Hi, I'm Arun. I work with OpenCraft currently, and funnily enough, I did Google Summer of Code like 2 times back in 2012 and 2013, and that's how I got started off with contributing to open source. And yeah, that's
And
Yes.
your interest, what's interesting?
Oh yeah. So first, it was I was doing remote sensing back then. I was doing a master's in remote sensing, so dealing with satellite data. So on the first project that I contributed was Quantum GIS. So now it's, I think, called QGIS, and it's an open source alternative to the ArcGIS product from ESRI. So
Hello everyone, my name is Farhaan. I work at OpenCraft and I have contributed to MOOC Plus course as well. Apart from that, I have contributed to a bunch of other projects like Fedora, Mozilla, and now I work with OpenEdX. What brings me to this course is I remember back when I was doing my GSOC, it was very difficult to get started to contribute. And so I thought that it will be a really nice thing to build up a course which actually can help or handhold people to get them to start contributing. Because once you start it, you just get into the habit of it and you understand how it flows. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Caleb. I'm at MIT. I'm a senior educational technologist there. So I primarily support the residential instance of OpenEdX. So I sit downstream from a lot of these contributions. And so I'm here for two reasons. One is to see sort of what the upstream looks like, sort of in a practical sense, but also on the scale of when you mentioned I can program a function and I can contribute. I'm way closer to programming a function. So I don't know what I don't know. So I want to learn as much as I can in that respects as well. So very excited for that.
Cool. You're not being skipped, don't worry. We keep the best part.
All right, hello, I'm Mary Gwads. I'm from Unicon. We are a consulting company in the education technology space. We've contributed to a couple other open source projects, uPortal and Sakai, and now we're interested in OpenEdX, and so I'm here specifically to learn about OpenEdX specific gotchas to open source contributions.
All right, sounds good.
I know so many of you. Arlena Mangan from ASU. Hi, Farhaan. Hi, Caleb. Hi, Xavier.
Hello. Small world.
It's a small world, yes. I am here because we are with OpenCraft, right? Are doing, Tim recommended I join the session, but we are doing one of the first kind of out of the box where we're doing a mentorship program. And so we have 5 developers going through that. And I hear that from this session, I might learn about what their experiences should be and what they should be learning so that I can help with their learning outcomes.
Definitely, that's an exciting one, yeah. And if that course was used for that, that would be really interesting to get feedback on.
Hi, I'm Terry Pantuso. I'm from Texas A&M University, and I am not a coder or a technical person at all. I'm a faculty member and administrator, but I've created OER text and open courses, so I'm here to learn, see what it's all about.
All right.
Hi everyone, my name is Roderick. Sorry about my English is not
It's great.
good, but I work in a company from Montreal, Challenge You. We're an organization that help drop off high school students to get the diploma. So since 2 years ago, we started working with OpenEdX, and we developed some features that we plan to make it open source. That means contribute to OpenEdX. So I'm a tech lead, so knowing more about how contributing in OpenEdX is can be good for our next steps. Thank you.
Definitely. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a catch box. Yeah, it's the first one to do it, Paul.
Hi, I'm Ty Hub. I work at Axim. I'm a platform architect for data, I think is my job title. We do a lot of stuff there, but we're kind of the stewards of the OpenEdX platform and kind of run the core contributor program on the permissions at least side, if nothing else. So yeah, I'm here to try to figure out how we can make the community more welcoming, more available, and make things better for all of our contributors and contributors to come.
Cool, that's great. That's interesting. We have quite a mix of different profiles, technical, non-technical. To reassure non-technical people, there won't be any code, at least for 99% of this. Like most of, we'll see that in the presentation, but most of the work for becoming a contributor is not technical in nature. It's very social. So even the activities that we have planned and etc., it's not technical, so it should work out. At least you'll tell me how it is. Great. Okay, we can spice it up also. That's no problem.
Not have people to do it for me.
Yes, that's the way to do it.
Guys, you know when they do it wrong.
You can also pair with someone who can code.
Here at OpenCraft will take a contract.
That sounds great. I'm loving where this is going. All right. So I talked a bit already about the Open Source Masterclass project, so I'm not going to go much more into this. One thing to know is that it is available online, and it is like a whole OpenEdX course. So we'll see what we have time to go through today. But we follow pretty much the syllabus of the course itself. So wherever we stop or whichever parts wasn't clear and etc., you get kind of a flipped classroom thing where you can go to that and continue it afterwards. Especially because becoming a contributor is not something you can do in 2 hours and a half. It will take time for feedback, response, reviews, follow-ups, and etc. So yeah, just to mention that. So the goal of the course is to get your or the students' first contribution merged in an upstream project. So it doesn't need to be something big, but often just getting anything merged is quite difficult. So one of the things we'll be doing is trying to learn through practice, because you could sit through 10 hours of me blah, 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 and not learn anything. A lot of, again, the issues will be psychological issues, like going in front of other people, daring to post things, and just like any interaction in public, that can be tricky. So yeah, so we are small enough that we should be able to do the activities together. Then in terms of like the content of the course, like we'll touch very, very briefly on FOSS history. I'm not going to bore you with that for too long. There is more in the course, but just like the basic origins, some of the tools that are being used. Same thing I think will pass quickly because probably you're all aware about that, especially for the part that's specific to OpenEdX. But if you're not, you will get the pointers. Then, like I mentioned, it's like contributing is very much a social activity rather than a technical one. So we'll talk a lot about communication skills, etiquette, the things to know, the things to do and to not do, and like what kind of a social setting contributing to a project is, these kind of things. How to pick a project. So spoiler alert, we're going to point to OpenEdX in particular, but obviously a lot of what we say here applies across the board. So same thing, there are more of that aspect in the course because here it's like more of an OpenEdX edition of the course. So if you are interested in picking another project on top of OpenEdX, of course, then you can have a look at the course. Then I don't think we'll need that too much given how few we are. But there is a tool that we can use at least to send each other's URLs and maybe have a look at it together afterwards. So if you want to already have a look, like take that on your phone, you'll have access to a place where you can post questions if you don't want to interrupt the flow of a conversation, but you want to make sure that we remember to address that question. The Q&A tab will be good for that. And there will be some activities during the workshop where there will be the tab on the right, sorry, that was on the left, on the right, that will have like some kind of interaction for you to interact with. All right, so one of the things that we do a lot also in the course is, and not just as a display, but that was part of the research that we did within the different communities that were participating, is that we interviewed many open source contributors, new and old, but often old-timers went through that and who remember a bit how difficult it was, the type of issues that they had. And we put some of the videos of those points, but also most of what comes from those interviews has been integrated as like the course content. So a lot of the things that we highlight are also coming from that.
Quite reassuringly, people that we interviewed told basically the same things that we already had written in the course. So it was.
You're not supposed to say that. We based it on.
But we did not tell them to tell it, so they.
Yeah, that was actually really nice because again, even for us, even after years of practice and etc., sometimes you're like, okay, am I really right thinking like that? Is it really that difficult? And getting like a huge, like at least a panel of contributors confirming those was really nice. And I think it's something common, like a lot of the difficulties that people face as new contributors are really common across the board. Nobody is aware, so everyone think, oh, I'm doing it poorly, I'm bad, and etc. But actually, it's a bit everyone. If I get the mouse somewhere. Here we go.
So it's really hard. It is hard. I think is when I started, I remember people tell me, no, it's easy to contribute. It's easy. It's not right. This is not the right. I think you should realize it is hard. As I said, it can be hostile, can be difficult. So don't fall for that. It's not easy. The thing that you need to have is patience and really keep work on it. If that's what you want, right? Keep work on it, don't give up, and then look for the right people because there is nice people there to help.
Yes, and that's one of the first things I think that we all faced is imagining that contributing will be like something you will be welcome with cheering people, yeah, new contribution, welcome. Actually, it doesn't happen like that. It's often really a lot more effort than we think. One of the reasons that we mention the social aspect is that a lot of developers will come and think, okay, I've done the code, I just have to post it, and then my job is done. No, actually, the work starts at that point, and actually, it should have started way before. So.
Just as a side note, you might notice the illustration and the intro of the video and stuff like that. We actually hired a designer to do those on Creative Commons license. So all the course of the material of the course, text and videos and illustrations is all on a Creative Commons CC by SA license. So everyone is free to reuse it on the same license. So if you need to adapt the course for your university or your project or whatever, you are completely free to just copy it and post it on the same license and disclose what you have added or removed.
Exactly. And as we'll show later, it's kind of a recursive thing where you can come to contribute to the course to learn to contribute, so to improve it too. So don't hesitate if you see stuff that are not great or you want a first contribution where people will kind of know what you're going through, that can also be a good one. So just very quickly, a couple of words about the history of Flows, or more like the initial spark. I don't know if everyone knows Richard Stallman, who created the Free Software Foundation and most of the big, especially historical license. So he had a very concrete problem is that he had a printer that wasn't printing, which we can all relate to, except that he is a hacker, so he was like, okay, I'm going to fix that printer. It's 1980, we should be able to print at that point. We still haven't solved that problem, but what he found out at that point was that he couldn't actually access the code, because unlike in previous decades where like basically the code was kind of considered part of the hardware, and kind of like not really like not protected, but actually hidden, or that was changing. It's the moment where people started to realize, wait a minute, we control the code, we can control people a bit. And so he was pretty upset with that. He's still upset, actually. Don't talk to him about it. And created like the free software movement over a period of time, and especially the licenses that are behind everything that we do today. So the main freedom that he identified were there are four important freedoms to be able to use, of course, but to be able to study, of course, something he couldn't do here. To improve it, again, he couldn't do it. And the result of that being able to share it with other people, basically just what he was able to do before, and that he was like prevented from doing at that point. Maybe a note quickly about the term FLOSS, if you're not familiar with it. It's free, libre, open source software. So it's a bit of a mouthful here. It's because there are some, like, it's a community, it's a big community, the open source community, and there are always factions, and free software versus open source, it's different philosophies. So we try to stay a bit out of that, as you'll see later. It's kind of a general advice with open source community, and just like talk about the concept in general and include the different part with that. But whenever I say open source or free software or whatever, don't get mad at me, I just mean FLOSS.
Also, there were discussions about the name of the course, which is called Open Source Masterclass. Because I would have preferred something with free software in it, because personally I'm more of that chapel.
What did we say about not rolling?
No, I would have preferred, but we decided on this because open source is the term that most people know and associate with the concept, and I agree with that. Like many people, like most people know open source is something, while free software is more specific or can convey wrong ideas about, then it's free as in free beer or stuff like that, which is not what we want to convey. So we kept Open Source Masterclass for the name of the whole course. And we explain the concept in this chapter, the differences.
All right. No. We're gonna, like, that's probably obvious to a lot of people here, but some of the properties of open source, which are kind of important to keep in mind in terms of contributing, is that because the code is available, because it is anyone can study it, because multiple people can contribute to it, it created different social dynamics that what you would get for proprietary software. So it means that it's kind of a model that's often used when you have different entities or individuals with maybe slightly different goals, but they want to pool resources a bit together, a bit like what we do with OpenEdX, where we all in different institutions or providers contribute a little piece of it. And it's one of the only models where this really works. Like if you just have like two proprietary companies trying to work together, often it's kind of tricky. So that's one thing. It creates, like, the fact that it's publicly visible makes it auditable. Like that's actually one of the best contributions to do, is to go review it and try to find flaws in there or bugs or etc. So we'll come back to that in terms of the type of contribution. But the aggregation of that gives really high quality, like code that's, again, often edited and in a way that a third party can verify and etc. So that's also important. So some examples beside OpenEDX, so we have Linux, Chrome, Firefox, some code editors like Vim, VLC, Blender. Forget what this one is. VS Code. Yeah, that's the bad guy. That's why. Okay. And so there are lots of them that are pretty big now. Some of them are small, and of course the rules of engagement are a bit different. Generally, for first contribution, we recommend to go with something relatively big, so that there is enough structure within the community to support new contributors, or you have to kind of know the maintainers of that project if they are your friends. That helps too. But generally, the big projects are often, not always, a bit better. Then, in terms of contributing, like I was saying before, a lot of people will just send a pull request and assume that that's job done. Not only the work will continue after that, but often one of the first things before writing any code is to start looking at the project and at the social aspect of it. So to start really early with small things to familiarize yourself with just the group, the rules, the tools, this kind of thing. So the earliest it started, preferably even before really considering any specific contribution, doing a bit what you're doing, coming here, trying to listen, what are those people from the project saying that we should do, trying to talk a bit with people is important. And that is something that comes before the contribution. Merging even something very small can take days, weeks, months. Actually, we have many pull requests that have been waiting for years now to be merged. So there are lots of things that come on a very long time scale. And the earlier you start it, the earlier that long time scale starts, but also it means that you might have to, you might be able to avoid redoing some stuff that you would learn through the social interaction and through participating to the project. So, as I was saying also earlier, it's not a passive project, so just going and reading the documentation, for example, is not enough. Because first, it might not be completely up to date. You won't get all the implicit rules and social relationship that you can get through actual interaction and relationships. And also, people won't know you. So it means whenever you're going to contribute something, it's going to come from nowhere. And it's possible, but it's harder. So, yeah, and maybe I guess the other part to complete that aspect of just sending the pull request and hoping that it's done, like I said, that's where the work starts, actually. So what's really important and what 90% of new contributors fail at, and I think I'm conservative, is to follow up after that. It's not just a one shot, we send it and it's done. No matter how well it would have been done, even if you're already really within the project, you need to keep going, making sure that you get the right review, that you address them quickly, these kind of things. So again, it's a social activity. So one way to think about joining a project for a first contribution is like joining a party where you don't know anyone. So some people like to arrive, crash the party, and start dancing on the floor and really taking the whole space. Some people know how to do that, but generally they are a bit obnoxious. So, as a first step, observing, again, in a party, you arrive, you're in a corner, you get a bit the vibe, then you start to strike a conversation with one person, maybe another one later, and maybe through the evening, you'll start to get a feel for how the group behaves, start to be able to put yourself out there a little bit more easily because you know kind of the implicit rules and expectations of the group. So there is something a bit like that. And even on the other side, when we arrive somewhere, we don't really know the people. So at that point, we might have a complete a completely wrong perception of how people think what they want. So like working on the relationship first allows to make sure that you will develop also the empathy that will be necessary later when the reviewers will be saying that your pull request is crap and you need to change everything. Like you need that at that point. And if you don't know why the person says that, if you have never talked to the maintainer, maybe that's going to be really a bit depressing and you might not want to contribute anymore. If you already know the people, if you know why they say that maybe it's just that you forgot something there that was important for them, that will help a lot. And also, I mean, like we are like a lot of developers, but all of us will have maybe sometimes some social anxiety or be a bit introverted. So delaying the initial contact and communication, we always find 1,000 reasons to do that. Oh no, I'm not ready. Maybe when I have that, or the proposal is not complete yet. And we build it up and it becomes more and more of a big initial step where we end up with a huge thing, a huge backlog of things that we have done, but we haven't talked about them to anyone. And that's one of the main things to avoid.
I was always curious about Linux, how it works, because I went to a free software conference. So that was where my interest started. Then I met someone on the internet who said, let's meet in this conference. And then there I met other people. And to be honest, for me, so I started with open source and my interest in open source because I want to know how it worked. But then I stayed because of the people. I really connected with the community, with the people I met. Everyone, a lot of very nice people, very principled people about, open knowledge, about sharing knowledge, about great technology that help people.
So what Camilla just described is like the success path for becoming a contributor somewhere. Like there are probably exceptions to that. Some people who don't like stay for the community, like she said, but most people, at least for me, it worked like that, and everyone I've talked to were a bit like that, is that you come maybe at first just because, you need to upstream something, or you want to give back or whatever, but often it's like the interaction with people, all the stuff that we've talked about that's a bit tricky to get started, that turns out to be one of the reasons to keep coming back, because then it's not just maintainers who refuse our patch, it's friends also. And I think in the OpenEdX community, that's like one of the great features is that like almost everyone is really, really nice, and it's really a pleasure to interact. That's for me one of my highlights. It's to come for the conference every year, because people that I see just in chats and etc., I get to talk to them, hug them, and etc. So at the end, that's a big thing. And in terms of motivation, that is the element that will often keep going when you get some of the other problems that we'll be talking about.
I was always curious about Linux, how it works.
All right, so now I've talked enough. It's going to be your time to work a bit. I'm going to be able to rest a bit. So we've talked about initial steps. So one of the best things is to start with some of the smallest things. And here we've talked about social interaction. So one of the smallest kind of interaction there is to just say thanks. Thanks for creating this project. Thanks for like making my life easier. These kind of things where there is no expectation. We are not asking anyone to do anything. We are just actually just putting ourselves out there and going through that first step that can be a bit difficult that I was talking about, which is like to go toward the community and interact in public. So what I'd like you to do, if you agree, is to think of a project that has improved your life, an open source project that has improved your life. It can be OpenEdX, but it doesn't have to be, because this one is really just like it has to be real and come from you. And find a place, like a forum or a chat or like a place where that community will be reading it, and post the thanks, like what you think of the project or some praise about it. So, like, of course, have a look before making sure that it's appropriate, but it's very low key. So even if you get the wrong place, it's not a big deal. People are still going to love that. And it might feel like, oh, but who am I to go post there and etc. It turns out that on the other side, from the project side, we almost never get that, like people coming and saying, thank you, you're great, and etc. And every time it happens, it's like, oh, great. So yeah, don't feel bad. And it's part of like kind of breaking the ice or breaking that initial step. For ourselves, basically. So I'll give you like 10 minutes to think about a project where you would want to do that. If you want help as to maybe not choosing a project because it's more of a personal thing, but where to post or etc., we'll be here. So just like call us, and so there's Arun, Farhaan, and Marc and me who can come and help you. And it's almost one person by person, so you're like very custom service today. But yeah, and again, like we're a small group, so if you have a question, just like ask it. But let's say 10 minutes from now, it's almost 10 past 2, so until 20 past 2. And you have in the Slido here, I'm going to, are you activating it? Yes. Activating the activity, or I'll do it afterwards, where you can post a link toward what you wrote, where, and etc. And we'll have a look at some of them together afterwards. Being confident saying no as a contributor is also an important skill, because you always get like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And if you say yes everywhere, you end up like screwed. So yeah, so that could be part of the confidence building, to still post there despite the risk of being asked. Yes.
You have to have your boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. You do.
Only do so much.
Mm-hmm. See, it's not easy. It's not for nothing. It's the first activity. We get shy, huh? So no. I'll be especially interested in what you will be posting. You can post anonymously also. That's fine. No worries with that. Well, that's where sometimes it's true. If you have a public persona and you're afraid that it might interfere, a lot of people just take like another identity, like a nickname, and then you separate like your official name from your open source activity. And within open source project, that's super accepted. It's not like Facebook or whatever where they are on you to make sure that it's your real identity. Open source projects generally are quite accepting of that. All right, we have already a couple.
And that's Marc is the particular group that we're looking where sometimes the public posting is.
Yes, yeah. It is a big barrier, and that's actually one of the big things to adapt to when coming to an open source project for like just posting, but even for code, like for developers, especially people who have been used all their life that only them will see their own code. Exposing that, it's a big step. And again, that's not for nothing that it's the first activity. It looks like the simplest thing in the world, but actually it's not. So. Mm-hmm.
I've worked with a lot of developers in my 30 plus years in IT. And
mm-hmm. Yeah, you see exactly what I mean. Yeah. Yep, exactly. But that one, I would say it's like it's really psychological, because when you do it, you realize actually none of the horrible thing that we thought would happen. And that's like, there is a part where it's a relief, and there is a part where it's a bit worrying. It's like, oh, nobody actually pay attention to that. But it's the kind of things like you can only feel if you do it, basically.
Changing the change management and changing the culture is part of what you're.
Exactly, yeah. All right. So I guess we got a good hack with having a thank you here. So that's posted in this room. Like, is that you? No, it's anonymous. So. All right, let's have a look at some of the ones that we've got. All right. So the project is 10 stack footer. That's a great post. Well done. So see, that's simple and already, like we talked about, that's tricky. Oh, the other one is selected now. Okay, let's see, can we see that? There we go, in the chat like that. That's enough, but already, so that's on a IRC channel. It's like Slack for developers, basically. And oh, did I start a troll? Okay, we'll come back to that. Yeah, so that's basically just developers and users using it, and bots, I guess. If you do get reply before the end of this thing, don't hesitate to mention it. It was from you, this one? Yeah. Okay. Great. That's good already.
My account was too new. They had to moderate the posts.
All right.
You know how that goes.
Yeah. That is definitely, well, again, that's one of the things. Until you have tried to post, you don't even know that. So you might be wanting to post at the last minute something important, and there you go. Another one here. So I'm guessing it's a comment at the bottom. Like I did not read the okay. So is it a comment on this one? Great. Yes, that's perfect. That's exactly it. Now, you see, like the places can change, the settings depending on what kind of project or user we are. That will change. But yeah, thank you for.
My space is not far from Carrie. I'll tell her to go look. Comment.
She should be happy. I owe her that thank you for a couple months now.
All right. Sorry? What do you see?
See that.
So those are the questions, but you have like the poll. Yeah.
Oh, I put it in the poll?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, if you were confused by that, they are at the top. Well, we don't have it. I think we have it in one of the previous ones. See, at the top. No, I'm too small to do that. But Q&A and polls. So, like to post that URL, it's in polls. All right. And then we talked about difficulties, but also things that can help. And he's going to talk.
I found somebody who actually mentored me through the process, and actually when I was trying to work on it, he would give me advice and things like that. So, and helped me iterate and learn and understand what's actually happening and why. And I think that's the most important aspect of it that I kind of treasured from that was the mentorship and the value that brought to make me feel like, even though I don't know anything about anything, it was still he felt it was worth his time to support me into becoming something more than that. And I don't think I would have started my journey and been all over the open source space as I am if it weren't for that starting point.
So that's also a really important concept, which is that, again, it's a social activity, but even the technical aspect of that activity are supported by the social aspect. So what he describes, I had the same thing when I started with open source. I had 2 different mentors who were really patient, answering all my naive questions and telling me what to do with what I was doing wrong or when I was stuck. And without that kind of support, it is really hard at the beginning. And especially because within a project, there will be lots of things that until you're really aware of all the politics, who decides what, and etc., might be a bit difficult to even comprehend or envision. So having someone who is able to tell you how to go from point A to point B is a big thing. And again, that reinforces that aspect of community, why we want to come back. Because when someone use their very valuable time, there's almost nothing as valuable as maintainers' time. That's always the thing that's missing in a project. If they invest something like that in you, you feel also that you have a responsibility to do something with it. And generally, maintainers also try to evaluate that. If I spend time with that person, will that give something to the project? Will that help some of the stuff that I'd like to see moving forward? So it's kind of a two-way things. And again, that's where a lot of it is based on relationships. And again, it's really important to keep that in mind, that maintainers and maybe mentors are one of the really critical resources in a project. So we kind of owe a lot of things to maintainers when we arrive in the project. First, they actually brought the project to the point where it is when we join it. So just for that, it's already great. But also without them, generally you won't be able to get things in. So you want to rely on that. And also when we contribute something, let's not forget that they are the one who are going to be maintaining it afterwards. You can be a contributor, you post your thing, it's merged, but then if it crashes 2 weeks later, like on edX or this kind of things, then the maintainers have to step in. So it's really important to be careful with that and to not be too careful to the point of not trying to interact and not engaging, but being respectful of their time and trying to optimize that.
Also on the topic of mentorship, that's something that we touch a bit on the course, and we tell people that it will be easier to contribute if you can find a mentor, either by your own means or by asking the community of the projects you want to contribute to.
Yep, and actually that's a good transition for the next part, which is within Open edX, where would you find those people? So we have actually touched on some of those places with the activity before, where people will be congregating. If you start engaging with those people, progressively some names will start to come back. And because you ask some smart question or help them to answer some stuff, maybe they will answer you a bit better, then you start to know them and etc. And that's how it can be. It's really rare that you arrive in the project and you're new, get assigned a new mentor. No, generally you need to work through that. I mean, another option is if you have someone, maybe if it's an organization initiative, having someone from the organization mentoring you. So that, especially within Open edX, there are lots of people already who are doing that. So if you're in one of those organizations or have access to that, that can be a good way, like it's done sometimes. But yeah, this is important. So the places for Open edX, you're probably but maybe not familiar with some of them. So the forum, the discourse forum, is a great place to at least get a feel for what's being discussed within the community right now. So it's because it's async and it's a forum. It's not necessarily like personal conversation or relationship building that much, but it's more a place where you'll get a feel for who is involved, who is talking about what, and you can also ask your own question and answer other people's question, which we'll see is a great type of contribution. You have Slack. So yeah, the modern version of IRC, if I understood the troll correctly earlier. So like a lot, actually, we rely on a lot on it in the community. I think a bit too much actually, but that's a place where it will be also a bit more informal than the forum. So you can also have maybe like more impromptu, more small group conversations sometimes, which can also help with the relationship building.
Also, you can go to the OpenEDX conference. I heard it's a great place with lots of people you can interact with.
Oh, that's a great idea. We should do that. So yeah, and there are other places you have, for example, GitHub. We'll see about the tools like the wiki and etc., which also allow to discuss. But those are the two main ones for actual discussion on top of OpenEDX at the other conference. So one principle that goes with this a lot is to try to start very small. Because again, like if we go back to that principle that it's mostly social activity, at first there is no need to like have a super big patch or big new feature and etc. On the contrary, the smaller it is, the least technical that is, the more you can focus on just going through the process once of posting something, getting people's attention on it, getting reviews, comments, maybe finding a way to get it merged. So the smaller you start, the least you'll have to be working on the social part on top of technical problems or actually something more difficult to contribute. So generally, like everything that comes from the agile methodology applies really well with that, where you try to have like small, regular iteration rather than one big thing that arrive all at once. So it's the same thing for getting a contribution in. Like if you start with something small, maintainers will are less reluctant to open it because that's easy, so they can say yes. Once you have a few small contribution under your belt, people know, oh, I remember that name. They already contributed to our thing. If that's a bit bigger, maybe that's worth looking at. So it's to build a bit that trust, those like credits, like street cred within the project, kind of, to also try to like attract the maintainer a bit like with fishing. You want to bait it a little bit at the beginning. So that's the main thing. Yeah, you like one very big classic example of what not to do. Would have been like HP's contribution to OpenStack, which was some of the contributors from that project really pointed to that, where they worked for years on a big feature, but not talking to anyone. They arrive with a big code drop, and that doesn't match the project at all, and everything goes to the trash. And that's such a classic mistake that a lot of people do. And often it's really linked to what we were talking before. Just to avoid that moment where you'll have to publish, talk to everyone, you always like, oh no, that could be a little bit better. Oh no, they will probably ask about that. I should add it. And then it builds up just because it's a good way to procrastinate on the difficult social interaction, the first step. So ideally, everyone's taking a break right now for a coffee break. So just make sure you build that in. Yes. Do you guys want to take a break, or what do you want? All right, let's resume and do a bit of math, like for those who stayed. So we were talking right before we give the context about small contributions. So like really starting from the smallest element so that the contribution itself is not distracting from testing the whole project, the whole contribution process. Sorry. So ideally, that should be the curve of contribution, starting really small. And actually, we have a golden rule for that, which is that the size of your contribution should not exceed the size of all your contribution to that project before, starting very small. So just like an exponential, start very slow. It builds very, very slow at the beginning, but then once you have started proving a little bit enough of yourself, it can go up quite fast. But the beginning is slow and it's intentional because there is a lot of learning. Even after the first contribution, just starting to add more layers, more complexity, you'll touch more things in the project, people will have more opinions, and the more gradual, the more you will have time to assimilate those things. By the way, this is for accepted contributions, because it's not enough to just send it and, oh, it's okay, I've contributed something. No, like going all the way to having it accepted, merged in the project, because until you have done that, you don't really know actually what you needed to do for that contribution.
I started contributing because I found the project cool, looks nice to me, and doing mostly documentation at the beginning. Like the first 6 months was basically doing documentations, updating the wikis, making sure that the screenshots were up to date. There's nothing technical, but still like rewarding. And then I wanted to update the website for the documentations, and I ended up to maintain as a maintainer of all the websites. Yeah. And when I was basically tired to websites, I started doing applications. But at the beginning was like really like it was nice to go to the conference, meet other developers, talk with them. I remember I was in Milano in 2019, a few months after starting doing the websites, presenting the new Plasma website to the Plasma developers in front of all of them. It was like still a nice feeling.
So, like the element that is talking about, like that, the fact that contribution don't need to be technical is really important, because while we are in that initial flat part of the curve, there is so much things we need to learn. Social part, but also progressively more the technical part, the context of the project, the huge code base that there is in a lot of projects. And this can be really overwhelming very fast. So starting with things like documentation, which are not necessarily technical in nature, but it's just you discover the software and you try to like make sure that the documentation matches that. It's already hugely beneficial to a project. A project generally don't have enough of those contributions, and it can be a little bit smoother than really trying to develop big features immediately. And like you mentioned, this is also a very typical profile. When you do that, because it's actually a valuable contribution, you get attention very quickly, because a lot of people are happy to see things moving there. Like most maintainers would want more documentation, just not want to write more documentation. So like when you invest a bit of time and effort in those things, very quickly you can end up being a new contributor just a few months in, and being invited at the conference, speaking in front of everyone of the updates that you've done, and then you already really pass some stage this way. So, in terms of first interactions, there are some of them that we've talked about a bit, like we did the saying thanks, giving some love. So that's an easy one, and it's easy to reproduce when arriving somewhere rather than just starting with the dev stack doesn't work. What is this? Starting with this will get a bit more karma. And another type of really small contribution at the beginning would be like asking questions, good questions at least, or answering questions even better. But already just asking them and like putting your name out of there, seeing who is answering that, and etc., can be a form of contribution, because afterwards that conversation, if that generates a useful thread, that will be read by other people and will be also a form of documentation.
Also, if it's a good question, there may be answers like, oh, this should be in the documentations, and you can answer, oh, I looked at the documentation, it's not there. And so you can have incentives and people encouraging you to put it in, actually to be in the documentation, and it will lead to further contributions and saying, oh, thanks for having asked that, because it will be as useful to everyone.
Exactly. And then again, like support is also something that answering questions, but fixing problems that people might have on chat, IRC, Slack, and etc., or at least answering there is really appreciated, because that's directly like one-on-one time that the maintainers wouldn't have to spend on this. And it's also helpful because it means like maybe people who are even earlier in the process still trying to figure out how to use the software. Maybe tomorrow they will be a contributor, but they need also that help at the beginning. That's a really good thing to do initially. Bug reports is also one, like we think that, it's just adding to the queue of things so we create work, but actually just in a good description of a bug, or reproducing on an existing bug, like saying, I tried that, this worked, this didn't work. Maybe creating a video capture of the interaction. All of that will save time to the maintainers. And then when the maintainer comes to the bug, he's like, oh, that person was really helpful here. And next time you see your name, might be more willing to help you too. So there would have been an activity with this, but I think we are going to skip it because we still have quite a bit to go through. But there is another activity that could be interesting to do. So we had a very simple interaction at first, which was just saying thanks. We didn't really produce a part of the project. Here, still nothing technical, but it will be a first publication. So that's also a step, like we were talking earlier about a coder exposing their code, posting your work out there and being willing to have other people looking at it, maybe not being happy with it or reverting it, is an important one. And so we could also use Wikipedia, but Wikipedia nowadays can be tricky to contribute to because they have very stringent rules. So it can sometimes be difficult to contribute to a page and not have that reverted if you're not familiar with the project. Again, another social thing there. But Wikidata, which is also an initiative from the Wikimedia Foundation, tries to structure data. So I'll give you some examples. So, for example, instead of having one Wikipedia page, which per language, for example, which will describe just with text, it's more like structured data. So, for example, I think this one was for elephant, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yep. And so elephant is one concept. So it's not like, again, on Wikipedia where you have one page for each language and that might link between them. An elephant is one concept, so it has one identifier. And then there are lots of properties for that identifier. And so one of them would be the different names that concept can have across the world in different languages. But then it can also have additional things like for Earth, it's also an instance of a planet, a terrestrial type of planet. So that's also something that then can be used to categorize data, make logical relationships between different data or objects, which can come quite handy when you want to process data. So the idea here will be to modify one of the Wikipedia concept or pages to add something, so or to change something. So yeah, actually that's the different type of things that you can change. So for example, that's I think for someone. Wikidata for someone whose employer is listed. So see, that's different subcategories for this. So for each, you can add a new statement saying, beside employer, education, for example, would be another category, like if that's not available on this. Or if you know that that person add a third employer, you can add a value within a specific statement. Or if you see one that is correct or where you have additional information, you can edit each of those values themselves. Then you will have to kind of pick one to modify, but actually this can be a good thing to do when you arrive in a project, to go to the Wikipedia page or Wikidata page, see a bit what kind of information are already in there that will already give you some stuff that you'll find useful afterwards during contribution, but you can also add what you learn on your own. So typically, the OpenEDX Wikidata item could be one to edit, or another project, or I don't know, ASU's Wikidata entry, like maybe something is missing in there. So it doesn't need to be a lot, so just maybe adding one value or something there, but just to get that experience of, okay, I've done the work, I just publish it, it's now on the project, and I kind of own that change originally. So like earlier, we can post a little bit the outcome of that on the chat. I don't know if you want to activate the activity, and then we'll discuss it together. So again, this is, for example, for OpenEDX. That's how that looks like. If you go on wikidata.org, you can search OpenEDX or whatever concept that you want. The interface is quite similar, at least at the top, to Wikipedia. And then, just like with Wikipedia, when you're logged in, you have the possibility of editing. So you might need to create an account if you don't have one on Wikipedia in general, and then submit. And then what you can post at the end is like a link to the changes on each page. There is like a view history that you see on the top over there. Here, which shows the changes. So once you will have done that change, that will appear there. And if you send a link to that in the poll section, we'll have a look together. Is that all right? We give 5-10 minutes to have a look. And if you have questions, same thing, can come help you with it. Wikidata is not always the most intuitive, but it's not too bad. There we go. Until past.
My first contribution, I was promoting KDE in Brazil. I'm Brazilian. And so I started by giving talks and small conferences that we had locally. My first contribution essentially was not even code. I always thought that even though I have a technical background, but as someone from a minority in open source, I always thought it was very scary. So yeah, I started giving talks about how KDE works, what's KDE, the new releases they had, features and things like that. And much later then I joined Google Summer of Code. So then I got a mentor, we worked on a project. But then it was all about people, like I met the right people at the right time in the conference. So I think I would tell people, tell everyone, like, if you are interested in open source, you should find a nice community. And if they're not nice to you, look for the next community. And there's so much that you can do with open source, not only code. You can help with promoting, as I did. You can help with translation. You can help with design, accessibility, usability. We need so much of that.
Keep doing that way. So yeah, she touches on a few subjects. Some of them will come back, like changing community when it doesn't work, and that's not the case with OpenEdX because we are perfect. But with some communities, basically that remains one of the thing you can do is to leave. But in general, like when you start joining a project, since it's so much based on the social aspect, the community, and etc., you need to find a place where you're comfortable with, where people will be welcoming, will help you achieve what you want to do. And that's generally an important thing. Again, with OpenEdX, we don't have too much that problem. But when trying to find an open source project, it's very common to arrive in a place, and it's not necessarily that people are hostile or anything, but they're maybe not too interested in you or in new contributors, or they don't know how to deal with them. And it's important also to be able to recognize that. But then also she talked about the different type of contribution we can do at the beginning. Again, with that goal of keeping them small, keeping the complexity low, and actually it's interesting to give a bit of a graduation on this. We've talked about some of them, like the support and question. That's kind of some of the smallest things we can bring, and they are already useful. Then it goes up with the concept of a micro patch where you will be doing a small change, but which is so small that it's not something that will be controversial, like you fix a typo in documentation or in a comment or indent correctly a code somewhere, something really non-controversial. But again, you test the whole process, and especially the technical process of having a patch merged in, which often comes with additional constraints and restrictions, like we were talking about CLAs and etc. You get to see the whole thing. Then documentation, we talked also about that one. It's a really useful one, and that can also vary in complexity. Again, go from the typo to reorganizing the documentation or redoing the websites around documentation, which can become a bigger one, but maybe not as big as a big feature added in OpenEdX, for example. Bug triage, so we talked about like reproduction, but also often bugs accumulate. It takes a lot of maintainer time to keep track of them. So having someone who not only goes there, read them, verifies them, but also suggests who should be looking at that, or might notice that some bugs are actually not bugs anymore. They have been solved, so that can be closed, or the original author doesn't reply to questions, so we can close, etc. That also helps, and that's starting to get a bit more behind the scene, so it's useful in between. That's also a graduation, creating a unit test for a bug. So that's still in like the reproduction verification category, but now we get into actual code where we add the unit test, so we have to use the functions that are available. We have like an objective way to tell if the bug is fixed or not. So same thing, that gains a lot of time. And the person who is going to fix it doesn't need to write the unit test anymore, it's already there. The bug fix itself, obviously, that's starting to be more into code. Then a feature that's then already compared to the bug fix, where it's usually not controversial in terms of, for example, product review. We were talking this morning about the product review. If it's fixing a bug, that's usually quite obvious. There are exceptions, but most of bugs, we can agree on how it should be working. I think in the future, it starts to become a bit more complex because there are different ideas about that feature. You need different type of people get involved in product reviews, like we have on OpenEdX. So it ramps up in difficulty. And I guess at the very top, reorganizing the whole governance of OpenEdX, for example, would be a good last task before retirement. So, yeah. Yes. Once you've done that, you've finished everything.
Just one quick thing. I don't know if you'll get to it, but in OpenEdX itself, we also have a tag in GitHub for good first issue.
Yep.
And that is exactly what it says on the tin. Those are things that the maintainers have decided is like, this is a great thing for somebody to pick up that's not me. You should try that.
Yeah, we'll come to that. We have links coming later. They are quite useful.
That'll be helpful for our program that we're working on.
Yeah, completely. That's where we get actually the bugs for your program.
Oh, sorry, I skipped that.
No, that's okay. That's an important one. You'll see I've kept the more technical parts at the very end because those are the things like the moment you start to set up the dev stack, you're like hours or yeah. But yeah, we'll make sure to before we have 20 minutes left to at least talk about that briefly. And now, like one of the type of contribution that I mentioned was the micropatch. So do you want to talk about it? Because this is his contribution. So.
Yeah. So actually, I was looking at the slides last night and I saw this, and then there was this small mention of my name up, and I was like, "Is this intentional?" And Xavier was like, "No, I didn't even know that this was yours." And then I was like, "Okay, but Xavier, what exactly is a micropatch? Like, I know patch, I know bug fixes, but what is a micropatch?" And he's like, "Okay, this term I might have invented." So the micropatch is basically changes which are not so big that it can cause any kind of a conflict, yet it is a way for you to experience the process. I think initially when we talked about the whole process where you got introduced to a project, you talk to the maintainers about it, you sign a CLA and things like that. So this was one of my patches in C Python. This doesn't change much. If you see, it has just changed 2 values and 2 documentation. And believe me not, this took 3 months to land in the repo. And it was a lot of back and forth about, okay, if time delta does this, it doesn't do that. This is where you should be putting this. And it has a series of comments below that. But it solved a lot of problems because a lot of people had issues with certain implementations of how they're going to use time delta. And this made me do a lot of work because one, this was a time when Python doesn't used to have GitHub issues. This is their own bugs.python.org, where filtering is a nightmare. I somehow found it, and then when I contributed to it, you have to sign a CLA, you have to go through the whole process, to so much so that you have to ping mentors that, okay, my PR is ready, can you review this? And I think in this one, I might have annoyed my mentor a little because he's like, this is not so important. We have more important things. And that's why I learned my lesson of, not pressuring them enough because your changes might not be the best thing that they want. But yeah, after this, I actually landed 2 more patches and they were faster. And because it helped the community to build a trust on me that, okay, he is someone who is coming back, he's continuously pushing changes. he's working on the reviews, and so it made this happen. And after this, I worked on Django. And in that project, believe me or not, I didn't contribute much on the side of where I'm picking up documentation. But what I did was I took up all the stale PRs where people have said, oh, they have just got MIA, this PR is open, but nobody has worked on it since 1 year. And then I took those PRs in and tried to work on them, try to address all the comments and try to put them through. And because of the community trust that I have built on Python, my Django PRs was also able to try. So
that's a great idea. Actually, if you want to add it to the course, the stale
Yeah.
PRs, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you want the next slide?
Yeah.
All right. So those are the OpenEdX tools.
Yeah. So another great idea always when you're being a part of the project is to see what tools that project is using. For example, in OpenEdX, we use a lot of Slack, we use Confluences, we use Read the Docs pages. All of these is something that you can get familiar to. And if you get familiar to it, then you can contribute to it. For example, if you have any issues, the first thing I do is go and read the docs about it. If I don't find it, I probably go on Slack and in the general channel or in the development channel, I'll ping people, okay, this is the problem I'm having. What is the solution for it? Most of the time I'll get a reply, but sometimes you don't get a reply. Then you go on Discourse and then you create a post saying that this is the problem I'm facing. Is there anyone in the community that is facing this problem? And you will find someone who is facing the same problem, and that also helps you to make friends. So I have made a lot of friends because I post all of these things. So it will be helpful if you get familiar with GitHub. It will be helpful if you are familiar with Read the Docs. And if you're not, don't be scared. Just go and read about it. It's not that hard. It is something that will help you get started, and it's something that you should always be looking forward to. There are other communities who use different tools. A lot of communities use Discord. There is Matrix and a lot of those tools. So it will be a good idea to see which community you're a part of, what are the tools they are using, and how are they using it. So, yeah.
And it's also a great way to find some micro patch to make, because as you read through the documentation, inevitably you'll find something wrong, typos and etc. And then you get to do it while you're looking at it. All right.
Yeah. So now we make a micro patch.
Yeah, we won't have time for this, so I think I'll skip it. But again, remember that the course is available in the MOOC. There are also the same mechanism to do it, and even for yourself. That's still something I do when I come to a new project, trying to start with that. No matter how much experience is always useful, so I encourage you to do it. Again, we learn by doing, not watching. So. Yeah. All right, and so again, all of this is not necessarily for the micro patch or the small contribution by itself, but it's to create materials to build upon, to gain trust, like you mentioned. So that's a good example of typically a new contributor coming to the Enki project, if you can know it, it's like the flashcard project, who did some updates in the documentation, maybe micro patch, so stuff found while going at it, just to show, okay, I can do work, I have done that. Know what would be useful for the project. And that's a question that maintainers can like. It depends on the maintainer, of course, but they see that it's someone who is doing work, so there is less of the doubt that if I answer this is going to be lost and I should be reviewing something instead. But on the other side, once you get actually some of the maintainers to indicate some specific thing that they care about, well, first, you're more likely to do something important for the project because they've been there for a long time. But also, it's great because that's probably the person who is going to review your patch afterwards. And they want the result to be merged because they were the one suggesting it in the first place. So it's a great way to, you don't necessarily work on stuff you care about at the beginning, but because of that, you get attention, you get reviews, you get stuff merged, and you keep the ball rolling. And after a while, with that reputation and good karma, you'll be able to push your own things that are important to you or bigger things.
Talk to someone who's actually already involved. And they can guide you to this. And the thing is, everyone starts this way for everything. No one is a superhuman able to understand everything right out of the gate and be able to do something right away. Well, maybe somebody is, but I haven't met them. And so, like, as long as you keep in mind that, like, no one else knows either, and you're only the one that's smart enough to just ask questions about it, then that's great. Like, you can, and people are generally, the general assumption I would make is that they're willing to, entertain the questions and help you understand so that you can get started and you can learn from it and have a positive experience from it. And if they're not, then, well, go find something else to do.
All right, so that touches on things that we have talked quite a bit about, but it comes back to, I'll try to skip this time for real. Here we go. Yes. So, and really, the aspect also of identifying a place where you'll get this kind of support is really important, because if you don't have it, you can do things alone in a cave somewhere for 6 months, but the risk of losing interest, of not actually finding what you want is important. So again, when there is not that support, picking another community can also be the solution. So I think we have 10 minutes left. So here I'll pass quickly, like generally for, you want to?
Yeah, we can just touch on a few. These are examples of a few topics we get through in the course to help people find projects and to give people which good questions they have to ask themselves to know if it's a good fit for contributing. Because in most cases, people don't know beforehand which project they want to contribute to, or if they can contribute to what they wanted to contribute to. And so one of the steps we ask is to identify the stakeholders. So in this context, it means which communities are involved in the project you are willing to get into. For instance, are there companies? Are there big consortiums? Are there universities, etc.? Are there just a bunch of individuals loosely connected? Everything is possible, so you have to ask these questions to know in which power structure you are going to step in, basically. Because if you are trying to contribute to a small hobby project, it's not the same as if you are going to contribute to Google's TensorFlow or whatever.
Mm-hmm. All right.
You also want to get interested into the licenses of the project to know in which legal dealings you will have to get through.
So we were talking about the CLA earlier. Yeah. That's one of the things, but the license too.
So we talk about CLAs and DCOs and licenses in general. So the licenses is basically which rights are granted and what is required of you when you get the code of any project. So we have some details about the common licenses, for instance, the GPL and MIT licenses, which are the most common ones, and which common CLAs you can find. And the most common ones that you will find in like single vendor small projects will require you to grant all your rights. And for instance, that's a structure that is not long-term viable for many projects, because at any point, the single company that controls it can decide to prioritize it. And so you have to it doesn't prevent you to contributing, but you have to be mindful of it and know that it can happen. It has the right to happen. It's allowed by what you have signed. So everything that you agree to, which is either the license with which you contribute to or the CLA when you sign it, has implications about what people can do with your work. And it's your work, so you have the right to say, no, I don't want to contribute under these terms.
All right.
Yeah. So this is a common theme about many discussions in basically any topics where people have opinions with a capital O. So there are people with some heated debates, and we basically tell people, if there is a heated debate and you don't really have a stake in it, then don't step in.
Actually, maybe especially if you have a stake in it, I would say, because that's something that gets even old-time contributors getting into a flame war, and then the thing is, it can be quite disruptive both to the community atmosphere and potentially to your reputation. So that's a very easy to destroy, like a lot of goodwill. So yeah, try to stay away from those. All right. So because we are getting to the last 5 minutes, I will have to redirect you on. Well, there is a couple of things that are at the end that I just want to point out. Like for those slides that I'll be passing by, it's all on the course. So if you're interested, go have a look there. There are also additional activities and etc. And actually, those sections are quite important because it deals with motivation and how to deal with the kind of the reviews and opinions that you get from an open source project. What we talked about also about knowing when to stop, knowing how to abandon commitments if they start to become too big. It's a very common thing within open source projects that people get burned out and don't know how to quit and just disappear. And it's not a very good mechanism for them and for the project. I will not pass this one, I'll pass it.
We talked a lot about it already. They say the same thing as us.
So there are also some tips about how to approach a big code base you're new to, like different technique you can do to take it little by pieces, by looking at pull requests and etc. I'm not going to talk into that, but if you're interested, it's in the course also. Reviews is a good way also to get familiar with the project. People are often shy, think you need to be maintainer on the project for 5 years before you can do a code review, when actually it's a great learning way, issues and etc. So again, all of those are more technical and again, it's all in the course. But the part I wanted to come to, if you are looking to contribute to OpenEdX, is so first here would be the list that you were mentioning earlier of bugs that are identified by the project maintainers as good ones for someone who is starting on the project. So it's always a good idea to look at it critically, because even if it was a good idea at some point, sometimes just because time passes, a feature gets developed and etc., that might not be as relevant. So make sure to analyze it, to maybe ask people on the task or the people you have got relationship with to help you pick one. And we can also do that. We won't have time to do it now, but you can come to us afterwards and we'll look at it together. The second part is on this page, which also linked to the help wanted ticket, but also gives some pointers with some working group which regularly have tasks for the taking, especially around the stable release. There is always testing to do, bugs to fix, and etc. Those can be good. Deprecation also, maintenance, all of those create lots of little tasks that are very time consuming, but are perfect to start with. Then Yes, that's mainly it. That's also where you see, like, setting up the development environment that comes almost last slide. Not first slide. It's like it's the last step actually to start to code. Like all of that comes before. And I think that's mainly it. If you want to install it, it's there. And hopefully that's you soon. There you go. And I think that's it. Any question with the 3 minutes that we have left? No, I think we talked a bit directly, so it makes sense. But yeah, do you have a question?
I thought about the question, but then I was like, no, this is too general. Or just
Go for it.
Well, it's more the testing, like you said, the stable release testing. That was like my first big sort of introduction into contributing in any meaningful way to the
Actually,
platform.
Someone need to throw that. Here we go. Here we go. It doesn't work?
There we go. Yeah, so I was saying that the stable release, every 6-month testing was when I really first contributed to the platform, and it's too specific for this particular class, but I think that is like a very scaffolded way of entering, sort of contributing, because there is the community testing. I think is done pretty well, and it's been accessible for someone that is technical but not so technical that so
definitely. And there are lots of non-technical tasks like around translations or documentation or release notes, and there are lots of things that can be done, or just plain testing of the feature and making sure that it works.
Yep.
So,
That was the same comment that I have. You kind of
go for it.
That you didn't really call out in this course, and I don't know whether the quality assurance testing, because I think
that would be part a bit of that, of like around the releases. So like everything that we mentioned about reproducing bugs or giving instructions, maybe taking a recording of you reproducing the bug or not being able to reproduce the bug. Actually, in the negative part can be useful. When there is a new release, there is formal testing, but there is always more testing that can be done. And when we find a bug, that's always a great contribution. So definitely QA is a great one.
The course, as we wrote it, is definitely aimed towards code contributions in particular, and not at other contributions like we mentioned other contributions as simpler or steps to get to code contributions, but other types of contributions like design or UX or whatever are definitely contributions, and we mentioned them, but they are not the focus of the course as we've written it. But they are worth mentioning too.
It applies pretty much the same way, except that instead of exploring the code, at some point you keep exploring the QA. I think that applies well.
We have a lot of different roles that are coding roles, like product management, project management,
translations.
a lot of translations.
I think actually the majority of core contributors on OpenEdX are non-code core contributors, right? So yeah, definitely. All right, that's it for today. Right on time. Thank you.